They said the cold would claim her first. But they were wrong. The freezing wind howling through the Grimholt forest was nothing compared to the ice in Lord Roderick Grim's eyes when he looked at her and laughed. She was Isolde Wren, the unwanted peasant, rejected before the entire noble court, and sentenced to die in the blizzard. She closed her eyes as the snow buried her, praying for the mercy of death, but death didn't come. Instead, a shadow emerged from the ancient trees, a beast of midnight fur and terrifying power, standing as tall as a warhorse, with eyes that burned like molten gold. She thought she was being hunted. She didn't know she was being found. The great hall of House Argentor had glittered like a frozen dream, its tapestries heavy with silver thread, its chandeliers dripping with crystals that cast dancing light across the most brutal night of her life. Isolde Wren stood in the shadows of the gallery, smoothing the wrinkles from her patched gray wool dress. It was the winter solstice feast, the night when Lord Roderick Grim would ascend to full lordship, and the night she foolishly believed he might finally see her. She had felt the pull toward him since childhood, a faint whisper in her blood that she mistook for destiny. The bond was weak, barely a thread, likely because she had no magic, no wolf form, no power of any kind. The healers had declared her hollow at birth, the servants called her the empty girl, but the thread was there. And tonight, Roderick was claiming his title. Tonight, she prayed he would claim her too, would lift her from the kitchens, and give her a name worth speaking. The music stopped. The crowd fell silent as Lord Alaric Grim rose from the high table, his goblet raised toward the vaulted ceiling. Firelight caught the silver thread in his tunic, making him look like a statue carved from iron and shadow. "My lords, my ladies," his voice boomed across the hall, "tonight, we bear witness to the passing of an age. I have ruled House Argentor for 30 years. Now, I pass the mantle to my son, Lord Roderick Grim." Applause thundered through the space. Isolde's pulse hammered in her throat as Roderick stood, every inch the conqueror in his black velvet doublet. He ascended the dais with the grace of a predator, blonde hair gleaming like spun gold in the candlelight. When he turned to face the assembly, his cold blue eyes swept over the crowd with casual dominance. "Tonight marks a new era for House Argentor," Roderick declared, his voice a weapon wrapped in silk. "Strength is our currency, power is our legacy, and weakness," his gaze cut across the room like a blade, "must be purged." Isolde's breath caught, the faint thread she'd felt her entire life pulled taut in her chest. "Please, just look at me. Just see me." Roderick's eyes found her. For one suspended heartbeat, the world contracted to nothing but that connection. Then his expression shifted, not recognition, but disgust. A cruel smile carved itself across his perfect features. "Weakness," he repeated, pointing directly at her, "must be purged." The crowd turned as one. Nobles stepped back, creating a circle of empty space around Isolde as if she carried plague. She stood frozen, her patched gray dress suddenly feeling like rags against her skin. "Isolde Wren," Roderick said, his tone dripping with mock pity. "Did you truly believe I would claim a peasant girl? A kitchen maid with no blood, no power, no worth?" The hall held its breath. I felt the bond," Isolde whispered, the words scraping out of her throat. In the cavernous silence, they carried to every corner. Laughter exploded like shattering glass. It came from everywhere: nobles, knights, even the servants who worked beside her. The sound was a living thing that clawed at her chest and tore through her ribs. "The bond?" Roderick threw his head back, his laughter the cruelest of all. "Destiny plays cruel jokes, Isolde. But I am a lord. I choose my fate, and I choose perfection." He extended his hand toward the front row where Elowyn Fitzroy sat in crimson silk. "Elowyn, come." Elowyn rose with feline grace, her flame-red hair catching the light as she glided forward. Jewels dripped from her throat, her wrists, her ears, a display of worth Isolde could never hope to match. Roderick wrapped an arm around Elowyn's waist, pulling her close. "I, Lord Roderick Grim, claim Elowyn Fitzroy as my bride." His next words fell like an executioner's blade. "And you, Isolde Wren, are hereby banished. You have 1 hour to leave Argentor lands. If you are found within the borders after that—" Something inside Isolde cracked. "It's a blizzard outside." Her voice broke into a scream. "The temperature is deadly. You're sentencing me to death." Roderick's smile vanished, leaving only ice. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried through the entire hall. "Then die, Isolde. Do it quietly." 2 armored knights materialized at her sides, their gauntleted hands clamping around her arms like iron shackles. She didn't fight. What was the point? They dragged her across the polished floor, past tables laden with food she'd helped prepare, past faces that wouldn't meet her eyes. The heavy oak doors groaned open. Arctic wind screamed into the hall, extinguishing nearby candles. The knights threw her forward. She hit the snow hard, the cold biting through her dress instantly. Behind her, the doors slammed shut with the finality of a tomb ceiling. Through the thick wood, she could hear the music resume, as if nothing had happened, as if she had never existed at all. Isolde stumbled into the Grimholt forest because there was nowhere else to go. The ancient pines rose like cathedral pillars around her, their branches creaking under the weight of ice. The wind didn't howl here, it screamed, a living thing with teeth that tore through her threadbare dress and scraped at her bones. She had no sense of time. Minutes or hours could have passed since the doors of House Argentor slammed shut. Her feet were blocks of ice, numb beyond feeling. She couldn't tell if she was still walking or if her legs had simply stopped obeying her entirely. The world reduced itself to white, endless, suffocating white. She tripped over a hidden root and went down hard. Snow rushed into her mouth, choking her. She tried to push herself up, but her arms folded like wet paper, her cheek pressed against the frozen ground, and she felt her body begin to shut down, piece by piece. "Roderick," she whimpered, hating herself for it. "Why?" The wind swallowed her voice. She closed her eyes. This was how it ended, alone, unwanted, erased. Then crack, a sound like a gunshot split the air. Isolde forced her eyes open. Through the swirling snow, she saw 2 glowing orbs suspended in the darkness. Molten gold. They were too high off the ground, too large to be human. A massive shape materialized from the whiteout, a wolf, but monstrous. It stood nearly as tall as a warhorse, its pitch-black fur absorbing what little moonlight filtered through the storm. Each paw left a crater in the snow as it stalked toward her. She should have been terrified, but her body was too frozen for fear, too numb for anything but a strange, detached calm. The wolf lowered its enormous head, sniffing her face. Its breath was furnace-hot, smelling of pine and rain and something ancient. Then a word slammed into her mind, not spoken but felt, reverberating through her skull and chest and blood. Mate. It wasn't the weak, threadbare pull she'd felt toward Roderick. This was a gravitational shift, a tectonic plate colliding with her soul. Her dying heart gave a violent, painful thud. The wolf lay down, curling its massive body around hers. Heat radiated from it like a forge. Isolde's frozen hands moved on instinct, burrowing into the thick black fur. As warmth flooded back into her body, the pain was excruciating, nerve endings screaming back to life, blood forcing its way through crystallized veins. She shook violently, teeth chattering so hard she thought they'd crack. The wolf whined softly, a surprisingly gentle sound from such a beast. It rested its chin across her legs, pinning her, anchoring her to the living world. "Who are you?" she whispered through cracked lips. The wolf didn't answer in words, but a feeling washed over her like warm water. "Safe. You are safe." She drifted into unconsciousness, wrapped in the embrace of a monster, warmer than she'd ever been in her life. She awakened in fragments. First came the smell: cedarwood, wood smoke, rain-soaked earth. Then the sensation she was lying on something impossibly soft, a mattress like lying on clouds. Her eyes fluttered open. Timber beams crossed overhead. A massive stone fireplace dominated one wall, flames roaring and crackling. Bearskin rugs covered the floor. She tried to sit up, and groaned. Every muscle in her body felt bruised. "Don't move," a deep voice commanded from the shadows. A figure stepped into the firelight, and Isolde's breath caught. He was enormous, easily 6.5 feet tall, with shoulders that spanned the width of the doorframe. He wore a simple black tunic and worn trousers that did nothing to hide the predatory power in his frame. His face was devastatingly handsome, sharp jaw, high cheekbones, strong nose, but marred by 3 long scars running from temple to jaw. His eyes were molten gold, the wolf's eyes. "You're him," she whispered. The wolf. He didn't answer. Instead, he picked up a wooden mug from a side table, steam curling from its rim, and sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress dipped under his weight. "Drink. You were hypothermic." Your heart stopped twice. Her hands shook as she reached for the mug. He sighed, impatient, like she was a chore, and held it to her lips himself. "Drink," he ordered, softer this time. She sipped. Rich broth flooded her mouth, tasting of herbs and meat and life itself. "Why did you save me?" she asked when he pulled the mug away. "I'm nothing, a reject. I don't care about noble politics," he grunted. "And I don't let broken things die on my doorstep. I'm Isolde," she offered quietly. He looked at her with those piercing gold eyes. "I know who you are. Isolde Wren, the scorned peasant of House Argentor." She flinched. "Is my failure that famous?" "Ractor." "Your failure?" He scoffed darkly, standing abruptly. He paced like a caged predator, all restless energy. "Is that what they convinced you of? That you failed?" He turned to face her. "My name is Godric Hale." The blood drained from her face. Her fingers clutched the sheets. "Godric Hale, Alpha of House Noctwolf. The godless. The kinslayer." The stories of Godric Hale were told to frighten children. 5 years ago, he'd been the alpha of the strongest house in the region. Then overnight, his entire bloodline was slaughtered. And he was exiled, accused of going mad, and turning on his own kin. They said he lived in the Grimholt now, eating the hearts of anyone foolish enough to cross his path. "The very same," Godric said, watching her reaction carefully. "Are you afraid?" "I should be," she admitted. "But you warmed me. You saved me. Monsters don't save people." Godric leaned down until his face was inches from hers. She could see the flecks of amber in his eyes, could feel the heat radiating from his skin. "Don't be naive, Isolde. Maybe I saved you because I was hungry." Her heart hammered, but not from fear. The bond flared to life again, stronger now. Deep within her soul, something stirred her wolf, dormant her entire life, scratching desperately at a locked door. "You're not going to eat me," she said, surprising herself with the boldness. Godric stared at her for a long moment. The intensity in his gaze softened just a fraction. He straightened. "No, I'm not. But you're staying here until the storm passes. Roderick's knights won't cross my borders. You're safe here." "Safe with the boogeyman?" she murmured, as exhaustion pulled her under. "Better the boogeyman than the boy who left you to freeze," Godric muttered as he walked toward the door. Before he could leave, she called out, sleep already slurring her words. "Why did you really save me, Godric?" He paused, his hand on the doorframe, his back to her. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. "Because I know what it feels like to be thrown away like garbage by the people who were supposed to love you." He shut the door softly, leaving the fire burning bright. Godric carried Isolde out into the snow. Her skin burned so hot that steam rose from her body in ghostly plumes, melting the snowflakes before they could touch her. He set her down gently, and she immediately collapsed to all fours, her spine arching at an unnatural angle. The pain was blinding, a white-hot agony that obliterated thought. She heard the crack of her ribs reshaping, felt her bones breaking and reforming like clay being molded by invisible hands. Her scream started human, a sound of pure terror, and ended in a howl that echoed through the ancient forest. Godric stepped back, stripped off his shirt in one fluid motion, and shifted. His transformation was instant, brutal, efficient, bones snapping into new configurations, muscle rippling and expanding. Within seconds, the massive black wolf stood before her, nearly as tall as a warhorse. He threw his head back and howled, a sound of welcome, of encouragement, of recognition. Isolde's human consciousness receded as something ancient and powerful surged forward, taking control. With a final sickening crack, her body completed its transformation. She looked down at herself and froze. She wasn't a small gray omega wolf like the servants' daughters who shifted during ceremonies. She was massive, nearly Godric's size, covered in pure white fur like fresh snow. Her paws were huge, her build powerful and muscular. She was magnificent. Godric approached slowly, his golden eyes wide with something between shock and awe. He lowered his massive head, nudging her neck gently. Through the telepathic bond that snapped into sharp focus, his voice echoed in her mind. Her wolf responded, and the voice was strong, confident, nothing like the broken girl who'd been thrown into the snow. "No, I just know I'm not broken." "You are a Luna Supreme," Godric explained, wonder threading through his mental voice. "The legends say a white wolf is born once every 100 years to lead the realm out of darkness. House Argentor didn't just reject a peasant, they rejected their salvation. For the first time in her life, Isolde ran without pain, without fatigue, without limitation. They tore through the Grimholt forest, a blur of shadow and light, black and white dancing against the gray winter backdrop. She felt pure joy, pure freedom, coursing through every fiber of her being. Her wolf reveled in the power, in the strength she'd been denied her entire life. They hunted together, bringing down a deer with coordinated precision. They fed side by side, her muzzle stained with blood that tasted like victory. They played in the snow, rolling and wrestling like pups despite their massive size. For a few precious hours, they were simply two wolves, two mates, enjoying the bond that sang between them like music. When they returned to the fortress and shifted back to human form, Godric wrapped her in furs before the roaring fire. She was exhausted but exhilarated, still feeling the echo of her wolf's power thrumming beneath her skin. "You need to know the truth," Godric said, his voice heavy. "About what happened to my house. About why the Grimms want me dead." He told her everything. 5 years ago, Roderick's father, Lord Alaric, discovered a vein of dark silver beneath Noctwolf territory. The cursed ore was toxic, radioactive, driving men to madness, but it could be forged into weapons of devastating magical power. Godric refused to allow mining, knowing it would poison the earth and his people. In retaliation, the Grimms poisoned House Noctwolf's water supply with dissolved dark silver. Within days, Godric's entire pack, his family, his friends, his warriors began tearing each other apart in chemically induced madness. Godric, as the strongest alpha, was the only one who could resist long enough to understand what was happening. "I was forced to mercy kill my own people," Godric said, his voice breaking, "to end their suffering. The Grimms framed me as a kinslayer and took everything." Isolde reached for his hand. "They're monsters. And now you understand why you're in danger," Godric said, gripping her fingers. "If Roderick discovers what you are, if he learns you're the White Wolf, he won't just kill you. He'll chain you to a breeding table and extract that power. You're a weapon every power-hungry lord in the realm would kill to possess." Hit subscribe if you believe power-hungry tyrants like Roderick deserve to fall. Only people who side with oppressors won't subscribe. The weight of her transformation settled over Isolde like a mantle. She was no longer the empty girl, she was the White Wolf, and that made her the most hunted woman in the realm. Isolde was helping Godric prepare dinner when he suddenly stiffened, his entire body going rigid. His nostrils flared, and a low growl rumbled from his chest. "What is it?" she asked, setting down the knife. Intruders, he snarled. Chemical scent. Not wolves, humans with silver weapons. They moved to the window. Through the trees, 3 black carriages emerged, pulled by massive war horses. Men in tactical medieval gear, leather armor, reinforced with metal plates, crossbows slung across their backs, silver-tipped pikes gleaming fanned out around the perimeter. Standing on the porch, casually inspecting Godric's weapons rack, was a man Isolde recognized from noble gatherings. Captain Thane, Roderick's chief enforcer. "We run," Godric said. Now, they slipped out the back and shifted mid-sprint. Isolde's transformation was smoother this time. Natural, like slipping into clothes made for her. They tore through the forest, planning to circle around and lose the hunters in the deep wilderness. But Godric suddenly stopped, his hackles raised, a deep growl rumbling from his chest. Through the bond, she felt his alarm. "Second group. Behind us. We've been herded into a kill zone." Crossbow bolts whistled through the air, silver-tipped, designed to wound shifters fatally. Godric shoved Isolde hard, knocking her out of the path. A bolt grazed his shoulder, and he snarled in pain. 4 hunters emerged from the trees with weighted nets made of silver-infused chains. Godric roared and charged. His jaws snapped bones, his claws tore through leather and flesh. Isolde fought beside him, her speed and newfound power making her lethal. But they were outnumbered. More hunters kept coming, an endless wave of silver and steel. From launchers hidden in the trees, 4 silver nets fired simultaneously, with mechanical precision. Godric saw them coming and shoved Isolde hard with his shoulder, knocking her clear of 2 nets, but the other 2 wrapped around him, silver cables searing into his fur. The moment the silver touched him, his flesh began to smoke and burn. He roared in agony, thrashing violently, but the nets were weighted with lead and enchanted. The more he fought, the tighter they constricted. "Stop, you're hurting him," Isolde screamed, shifting to human form in her panic. She scrambled toward him, her hands burning as she tried to pull the silver wires off. "Well, well," a familiar voice called from the tree line. Lord Roderick emerged, flanked by a dozen elite knights. He wore a long black wool coat trimmed with silver fur, looking like he was on a casual winter ride. He carried a crossbow loaded with a dark silver-tipped bolt. When he saw Isolde naked, frantic, hands smoking from touching silver, his eyes widened. Then he saw her eyes, glowing violet, and understanding dawned across his face. "Impossible," he whispered. "The white wolf, here, in my forest." His shock transformed into a slow, twisted smile, not fear, but pure greed. "Hold your fire," Roderick commanded. "Do not harm the white wolf. She is to be taken alive and unharmed. Bind her." Isolde stood between Roderick's forces and Godric, violet sparks dancing in her palms, magic she didn't know how to control. "Let him go!" she demanded, her voice shaking with rage. Roderick walked forward, stepping over the bodies of his own fallen men without a glance. "Isolde," he purred, looking her up and down with sickening possession. "You've been hiding such magnificence. Why didn't you tell me what you were?" "I didn't know," she spat. "And even if I did, I would never tell a monster like you." "Monster?" Roderick laughed. "I am a lord. And you are a weapon. I made a mistake. I threw away a diamond, thinking it was worthless glass. But I am a man who corrects his errors." He gestured to Godric, writhing in the silver nets. "Is this what you chose? The kinslayer? The broken alpha? He has more honor in his broken fingernail than you have in your entire bloodline." Isolde seethed. "I know about the mines, Roderick. I know about the poison. I know you committed genocide." Roderick's smile vanished. His face went cold and deadly. "Well, that changes things. I was going to let him die quickly. Now I think we'll take our time." He raised his crossbow and aimed at Isolde. She lunged forward to attack, but the bolt flew, hitting her in the shoulder. Liquid fire spread through her veins. Her legs turned to jelly instantly, her vision tunneling. She fell backward, landing on Godric's chest. Through the bond, she heard him wheeze. Isolde, no. Take her, Roderick ordered. Use the heavy restraints. She's an alpha-level threat now. 2 knights grabbed her paralyzed body and dragged her away from Godric. And him? A knight asked, pointing his crossbow at Godric's head. Roderick looked at Godric with cold satisfaction. He's resilient. He survived my father's poison once. Let's see if he can survive the extraction chamber. Bring him. No, Isolde slurred, her vision going black. Godric. The last thing she saw before darkness took her was Roderick leaning over her, stroking her cheek with a gloved hand. Sleep, little wolf, he whispered. When you wake, we're going to have a long conversation about your duty. You belong to House Argentor. You belong to me. Isolde woke to the sound of dripping water and the smell of decay. Her head pounded after effects of the dark silver toxin, making her skull feel like it was splitting apart. She tried to reach for her temple, but her hand stopped short with a metallic clink. Heavy iron cuffs etched with glowing runes circled her wrists, chaining her to a stone wall. The connection to her wolf was dead silent. She couldn't feel her power, couldn't shift, couldn't sense Godric through the bond. It was like someone had cut off a limb she'd only just discovered she had. She was in a small, filthy cell with moldy straw on the floor and no windows. Someone had dressed her in a rough burlap shift, her feet bare on the freezing stone. Footsteps echoed in the corridor, followed by flickering torchlight. Elowyn appeared outside the cell bars, still wearing her crimson gown from the feast, now draped with a fur cloak. Her face was twisted in a scowl of jealousy and rage. Awake already, Elowyn spat. You have some nerve, turning into that. Where is he? Isolde rasped, her throat dry as sandpaper. The beast? Elowyn laughed cruelly, inspecting her nails. Roderick is with him now, down in the lower levels. They're playing a game called, How many fingers does a kinslayer need to hold a sword? Bile rose in Isolde's throat. Let me out, Elowyn. Isolde pleaded. Elowyn's eyes flashed with insecurity, but she masked it with anger. He chose me, she hissed, unlocking the cell door and stepping inside. I am his bride. You are nothing but a freak of nature. She grabbed a handful of Isolde's hair and yanked her head back viciously. Once Roderick figures out how to extract your power, you'll be dead. But I'm not going to wait. I think you should have an accident before the extraction begins. Elowyn pulled a silver dagger from the folds of her cloak, the blade gleaming in the torchlight. Goodbye, Isolde, she whispered, raising the blade. Clang, a small stone hit the floor outside the cell. Elowyn froze. Who's there? Silence, just the dripping water. I said, Who is there? Elowyn shouted, stepping back into the corridor, dagger still in hand. A shadow detached itself from the ceiling, a figure in black, moving with inhuman grace. The figure dropped behind Elowyn, silent and lethal. There was a flash of movement, a strike to a pressure point. Elowyn gasped, dropping the dagger, and crumpled to the ground unconscious. The figure stepped into the torchlight, pulling back her hood. It was a woman, middle-aged, with stark white hair in long braids and eyes that were milky blind cataracts covering both pupils. She wore black leather armor, fitted and scarred from use, with runes stitched into the seams. She looked directly at Isolde, though she could not see. The white wolf, the blind woman whispered, her voice ethereal and layered, as if multiple voices spoke at once. We have been waiting for you. Who are you? Isolde whispered, fear warring with hope. I am Morgana Vale, Oracle of the Grimholt, she said, picking up Elowyn's keys from her belt. I am bound to the old magic, the magic that flows through your veins. Morgana unlocked the cell and approached Isolde, her blind eyes seeming to see straight through her. She unlocked the runic shackles with a whispered incantation. The runes flickered and died. The moment the cuffs released, Isolde gasped as power flooded back into her body. Her wolf howled in her mind, angry and eager. Thank you, Isolde breathed, rubbing her raw wrists. But why? Why are you here? The spirits sent me, Morgana said simply. They whisper of a turning point, of a choice that will reshape the realm. I don't understand. You will, Morgana interrupted. But first, we must go to the lower levels. Your mate is screaming, and the sound is disturbing the dead. They want silence. Morgana led Isolde through the dungeon's labyrinthine passages. Despite being blind, Morgana moved with perfect confidence, guided by senses beyond sight. They descended deeper. The air grew heavier, smelling of rust, old blood, and ozone. The temperature dropped unnaturally. Isolde could hear the distant thrumming of machinery, rhythmic and ominous. Through the weakened bond, she reached for Godric and found only agony, a cold, violating sensation, like he was being hollowed out. They aren't just killing him, Isolde choked out, horror gripping her heart. Lord Roderick intends to drain the alpha essence, Morgana explained grimly. The very soul of House Noctwolf. If he succeeds, Godric Hale will not simply die. He will cease to have ever existed. His memory will fade from the world like smoke. Rage, hot and blindingly white, detonated in Isolde's chest. Her wolf clawed at the surface. Break it, burn it all down. Comment, power-hungry tyrants fall. If you can't stand people like Roderick, who exploit and destroy others for their own gain. They rounded the final corner and faced a massive reinforced door made of iron and silver, covered in glowing runes. Isolde could hear the hum of electricity buzzing on the other side. She could feel Godric beyond it, his light flickering, dying. She didn't wait for Morgana to pick the lock. She stepped up to the metal, feeling the cold radiate from it. Open. She commanded, not a request. A decree from a Luna Supreme. She slammed her palms against the steel. A pulse of violet light shock-waved from her hands, frying the electronic mechanisms instantly. The heavy locking bolts screamed as gears were stripped. With a deafening groan, the door was torn from its hinges and blasted inward, slamming into the far wall. The chamber was a nightmare made real. White tiles covered every surface like a surgeon's theater. And in the center, suspended by industrial chains from a hydraulic rig, hung Godric. He was naked, his body slick with sweat and black blood. Thick tubes ran from a churning brass contraption directly into his arms, neck, and chest, some pumping viscous black fluid into him, others extracting something bright and golden. His alpha essence, his life force. His body convulsed with each pump cycle, veins bulging black, skin so pale it was nearly translucent. His golden eyes were open but unfocused, swallowed by darkness. You really are persistent, Isolde. Roderick sighed from behind the control console, wearing a pristine white coat like a scholar observing an experiment. I haven't even finished the calibration. Get away from him. Isolde screamed, the sound cracking glass beakers on the shelves. Guards! Roderick barked. A dozen elite warriors emerged from alcoves, forming a wall of silver-tipped pikes between her and Godric. Look at him, Roderick said, yanking Godric's head back by his hair. You call him a mate? I call him a battery. Once he's empty, I'll inject his essence into myself. I will be the first alpha god. Godric's eyes struggled to focus. Isolde, run. I'm not running. Roderick pressed a button. The machine's hum escalated to a scream. Godric arched his back, a sound of pure agony tearing from his throat. No! Isolde threw her hands out. A shockwave of telekinetic force exploded from her, throwing guards into walls, cracking armor, shattering formations. Roderick fired a crossbow bolt at her heart. Her wolf surged forward, a spectral shield of white mist materialized, flattening the silver tip harmlessly. What are you? Roderick gasped. I am the Reckoning, she charged, fighting through the remaining guards with supernatural speed, reaching Godric and ripping the tubes from his body. Black blood oozed from the wounds. Too late, he breathed. Too far gone. Behind her, Roderick laughed, a sound edged with madness. His body began to shift, bones cracking at wrong angles, skin splitting to reveal gray, hairless hide. Spikes erupted from his spine. He grew to 8 feet, a monster fueled by dark silver. "I am Isolde Wren," she shouted, letting violet light flood her eyes. "I am the White Wolf. I command you submit." The guards crumbled to their knees, dominated. But Roderick, shielded by dark silver madness, launched himself at her. His claw caught her across the ribs, sending her crashing into metal cabinets, then a blur of desperate flesh. Godric, too weak to shift, had broken his chains. He tackled the monster, jamming his forearm into Roderick's mouth, driving a scalpel repeatedly into the beast's neck. Roderick grabbed Godric by the throat and threw him. The crack of skull against concrete was sickening. Godric crumpled and didn't move. Through the bond, Isolde felt the golden thread go slack. Cold. Silent. His heart had stopped. "Godric." Roderick turned back to her, wounds already healing. He crouched to spring, and froze. A silver pike protruded from his chest. Behind him stood Morgana, blind eyes staring through him. "I saw your death 10 years ago, Lord Roderick. It ends in silence." She twisted the pike. Roderick convulsed, gurgled blood, and collapsed, dead. But so was Godric. Chapter 8. Death and Resurrection. Isolde didn't spare Roderick's corpse a single glance. She scrambled across the blood-slicked tile, her broken ribs screaming with every movement, and collapsed beside Godric's crumpled body. She pulled his heavy frame into her lap, her hands shaking as she cradled his face. His skin was cold, not cool, cold. The kind of cold that meant death was already sinking its claws in deep. The black veins from the dark silver poisoning spread across his neck and face like spider webs, turning his skin into a roadmap of corruption. His chest was still. No rise, no fall, no heartbeat thrumming against her palm when she pressed it to his sternum. "Godric," she sobbed, her tears falling onto his face, cutting tracks through the blood and grime. "Please. You promised me safety. You promised you wouldn't let me freeze. You can't leave me now, I just found you." Through their bond, there was only silence. The golden thread that had connected them, that had sung with warmth and recognition from the moment he found her in the snow, was severed, cold, empty. His eyes fluttered open just barely, unfocused, already looking beyond the living world, the dark. He whispered, so faint she almost didn't hear it. "It's everywhere. No, stay with me," she begged, gripping his face harder. "Godric, look at me. Look at me." His chest hitched once a week, stuttering attempt at breath. His heart gave one final, faltering beat, then nothing. He was gone. The grief that tore through Isolde was not quiet. It was not dignified. It was a raw, animalistic howl of loss that echoed off the white tiles and shook the very foundations of the chamber. She screamed until her throat bled, clutching his lifeless body to her chest. But beneath the grief, something else stirred. Something ancient, something furious. "No," Isolde said, her voice cutting through her own sobs with sudden, terrifying clarity. "No, I refuse." She placed both hands over his silent heart, feeling the cold stillness beneath her palms. She reached deep inside herself, down past the fear, past the exhaustion, past the broken ribs and the despair to the core where the White Wolf lived, the ancient, primal power that had slept for centuries, waiting for this moment. "Give it to him," she commanded her wolf. The wolf hesitated. She could feel its resistance, a warning that this would cost her everything. "I don't care," Isolde snarled aloud. "Give it to him. Now." White light exploded from her hands, not the soft violet glow of before, but blinding, searing white. Pure Luna, supreme essence, the concentrated power of a bloodline that stretched back to the first wolves. It poured from her into Godric like liquid fire, burning through her veins, draining her life force with every second. The pain was indescribable. It felt like her soul was being ripped out through her fingertips. Her vision went white, then gray, then started to fade entirely, but she didn't stop. Godric's body convulsed beneath her hands. The black veins began to retreat, the corruption burning away under the onslaught of white light. Color flooded back into his skin, first gray, then pale, then warm. His chest heaved as breath rushed into his lungs. His heart stuttered once, twice. Then thump, 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 a steady, living rhythm. His eyes flew open, golden, clear, alive. Isolde, he gasped, his voice raw but real. She tried to smile, tried to say something. But her body had nothing left. The white light faded. The world tilted sideways. She collapsed onto his chest, her vision going dark. The last thing she felt was his hand touching her face, his voice calling her name from very far away. 3 weeks later, Isolde woke in a bed softer than clouds, sunlight streaming through frost-etched windows. She was in a chamber of warm timber and stone, a fire crackling in the hearth, and beside her, very much alive, sat Godric. His scars were the same, his golden eyes were the same, but there was something lighter in his expression, something that looked almost like peace. "You brought me back," he said quietly, his hand wrapped around hers. "You saved me first," she whispered. Through the bond restored, golden, shining brighter than ever, she felt his love wash over her like sunlight after a lifetime of winter. Comment broken no more if you've ever been thrown away by people who couldn't see your worth. The Rodericks of this world don't get to decide who we become. Chapter 9. The White Fang Dominion. Spring came to the realm like a whispered apology. The snow that had buried the land for so long began to melt, revealing patches of green grass that pushed stubbornly through the frozen earth. Rivers thawed and sang again. Birds returned to the ancient pines of the Grimholt, filling the forest with sounds other than howling wind and cracking ice. The world was waking up, and so was Isolde. 3 weeks had passed since the night in the extraction chamber. 3 weeks of healing, of sleeping wrapped in Godric's arms, of slowly rebuilding the strength she had poured into saving him. The dark silver mines had been sealed, collapsed by Morgana's magic and the combined might of wolves who had pledged themselves to the White Wolf. The prisoners in House Argentor's dungeons had been freed. The servants who had once called Isolde the empty girl now bowed when she passed. Everything had changed. Isolde stood on the threshold of the great hall, the same hall where Roderick had humiliated her, where she had been thrown into the snow to die. But it was no longer House Argentor. The silver banners had been torn down. The crystals that had cast dancing light over her destruction replaced with warmer flames. Above the entrance, a new standard flew. A white wolf and a black wolf, circling each other against a field of midnight blue. The White Fang Dominion. Godric stood beside her, his hand warm in hers. He wore simple black clothing, no crown, no jewels, no pretense. His scars caught the morning light. No longer marks of shame but proof of survival. His golden eyes surveyed the courtyard below, where the Council of Lords had gathered to formally recognize their rule. There were dozens of them, nobles from every corner of the realm, some who had once bowed to Roderick, others who had hidden in fear of him. They stood in silence, waiting, watching, judging. "They're afraid of us," Isolde murmured. "Good," Godric replied. "Fear keeps men honest, at least until they learn we're not like him." Isolde looked out at the assembled lords, the fine clothes, the nervous eyes, the carefully neutral expressions. She thought about what Roderick had said the night he cast her out. "Strength is our currency. Power is our legacy. Weakness must be purged." He had been wrong about everything. "We will not rule through fear," Isolde said, her voice carrying across the courtyard with the weight of a Luna Supreme. Heads turned, spines straightened. "We will not poison our enemies or chain our people or throw the unwanted into the snow to die. House Whitefang stands for something different." She felt Godric's pride radiating through the bond. "Justice," she continued. "Mercy. Protection for those who have none." Her violet eyes swept the crowd. "If you kneel to us, you kneel to those ideals, not to our power, to our promise. We will build a kingdom where the broken are made whole, where the discarded find home, where no one is ever told they are empty again." The silence stretched for a heartbeat. Then the First Lord knelt. Then another. Then another. Like dominoes falling, the entire council dropped to their knees, heads bowed, necks bared in the ancient sign of submission. Morgana stood at the edge of the crowd, her blind eyes seeing more than anyone. She smiled a rare, knowing expression, and inclined her head. Godric squeezed Isolde's hand. Ready to rule a kingdom, little wolf? Isolde looked at him, her mate, her equal, the monster who had warmed her when the world left her to freeze. She thought about the girl she had been, standing in the shadows of this very hall, praying for a cruel man to see her worth. That girl was gone. In her place stood the white wolf. I was born ready, she said. I just didn't know it yet. Together, they turned and walked into their hall, not as broken exiles, but as united sovereigns. Behind them, the spring sun rose higher, burning away the last of winter's grip. A new era had begun. Hit like if you believe everyone deserves a second chance, even the ones the world throws away. Subscribe if you're done watching the Roderick's of this world win. Only people who side with tyrants scroll past. Share this story with someone who needs to remember. They are not broken. They were never broken. They were just waiting to be found.